Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and I'm back with you today for another video. And today's video is going to be on player mobility, a little bit about the salary cap, contracts, league revenue, just a lot of that stuff. Basically, what does all of it mean for player mobility? Is player mobility good or bad for the NBA? And what does it mean for owners, teams overall, and players? So the reason that I wanted to do this was because just recently with free agency happening, and even last year with free agency and everything, I think that it's a very unique time in the NBA. A lot of things are changing as far as the status quo, as far as what free agency means, how contracts are handled, and all that. So I really just want to get into that, give my thoughts on it. Do I think that these changes to how everything's going are good or bad, or just in general what they mean for the NBA? So I think to start off with, I'm just going to give a rundown of some of the changes that have gone on over the years in the NBA and what they mean for the league now. So currently, if a player is an unrestricted free agent, they can sign a deal up to a length of 4 years long, usually with a player option for the 4th year, meaning that a player can opt out and be a free agent after 3 seasons with a team. This is a big change from how it used to be in the league. I think it changed maybe around 2005, I want to say, which is when there was a new CBA agreement. It may have also changed in 2011, I think is actually more likely, when the league also had a new CBA agreement, and that's what caused a lockout. Previously, I know that teams could sign a player for up to 6 seasons in free agency instead of 4, which obviously locks them up a lot longer. You got them for a full 6 years instead of 4 and maybe even 3 if the player opts out like it is now. So I think that is our main reason for increased player mobility, is that the contracts signed in the league just don't last very long anymore. And so when contracts are up, players are free agents and more likely to change teams if they're unhappy with their scenario. Whereas previously, if a player was unhappy, they just kind of have to deal with it because there's no option for them. But now, if you're a year into a contract, you only have to be in that contract for 2 more years before you can opt out. Whereas, let's say with the old way of it was, if you signed the 6-year contract, then 1 year in, you couldn't just say, oh, there's only 2 more years I can deal with this. It's 5 more years that you're going to have to deal with that. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons for the change. And I think it's very common these days to see players with 1 or 2 years left on their contract demand a trade. You see a lot of this with players in the past, like Dwight Howard on Orlando demanding a trade. More recently, Paul George, Kyrie Irving demanding trades. Right now, Kawhi Leonard is demanding a trade to get away from the Spurs. Each of those guys, when they demanded their trades, had a year left on their contract. And in the case of Paul George, he actually had 2 years left on his contract. But so it's just a common trend now, it seems like, for guys to want to leave their teams after only a few seasons. But I don't know, it's just the way it works now because the CBA came to that agreement, and the players union and the league, that's the deal that they agreed on, to have the shorter contracts, which ultimately gives the players a lot more power. Now, from an owner's perspective, I think that this is probably not what they want, and that they have to shell out a lot more money these days to the players because of the way the contracts are structured, and to retain players, they have to pay them a lot more. So owners probably aren't as happy because they're giving up a lot more money with the salary cap spikes, but it's just the way it is, and they're going to have to deal with it, and they're still making a tremendous profit, so I feel like it's really not that bad, because in the grand scheme of things, with the money that they're making off of their teams, it's really, it's a drop in the well compared to what they're going to make overall. As far as GMs and league executives, I feel like these shorter contracts make it more of a challenge to do their job, in that once you sign a player, you don't just have them for the bulk of their career, which is what a 6-year contract would give you. With these 4 years and an option for the 4th year, where it's basically a 3 years guaranteed contract, you have such little time to keep a player. You really have to show them results in those 3 seasons, or else they can just walk and you can't do anything about it, which is really unfortunate for the teams if it's a guy like, I think the best case scenario of this would maybe be Dwight Howard in Houston. Now, they didn't really want him anymore, so they didn't mind that he opted out of his contract, but when they signed him to a deal, it was supposed to be for the bulk of his career and maybe the rest of his career, but it was only a 4-year deal with a 4th-year option. So he was only there for 3 years because he did opt out of that 4th year, and because the direction of the team wasn't going the way he wanted, he decided to leave. Now, again, this is a little bit different in his scenario because both sides didn't want to reunite, but in any other scenario, it's a similar thing where if the player doesn't like the direction of the team, they can opt out and the team can't really do anything about it. But these 3 years, it's such a short window. Like, for instance, Gordon Hayward, he signed a 4-year deal when he signed with the Celtics last offseason with the 4th-year option. So he's already gone through one of those seasons. So he's only guaranteed to be in Boston 2 more years. Now, when a player signs a max contract in the offseason, you sort of expect them to be with that team for such a long time. But when you think about it, Gordon Hayward might only be in Boston 2 seasons of actually playing. That's kind of crazy to think about when he signs a max deal. In your head, or at least in my head, I kind of build it up to be like, wow, he's going to be there for like the chunk, like basically for his prime. Whereas he could just leave in 2 years and go get another max contract. Actually, if you think about it, he'll only be about 30 when that rolls around if he does decide to opt out. So I think for GMs it's a lot harder because they have to basically always be building and improving, and if they don't, their players will just walk. So from their perspective, I think it's a lot harder to balance all of that and try to impress players basically and sell them on the franchise and that they're going to be doing well in the future. And from a player's perspective, it's helped them a lot. It's given them a lot more power. You see these guys, like as I previously mentioned, Dwight on the Magic, Kyrie on the Cavs, Kawhi on the Spurs, and Paul George on the Pacers. They all gained so much power when they just said, we demand a trade and we're not going to re-sign here, so you might as well trade us now. That gave the players so much power in those scenarios. Like Kyrie Irving, he said he would sit out the last year on his. He said he would sit out this entire year if he didn't get traded. And now you see a lot of stuff, like even Jimmy Butler recently said he doesn't want to re-sign with the Timberwolves, and they offered him the max extension and he turned it down. And so now they don't really know whether they should trade him or what to do because he's got him in a really tough spot. And this is becoming really common for players to basically just make demands, and teams basically have to meet them, or else they're going to just lose a star player for nothing, which no one ever wants to have happen, like Oklahoma City in 2016. So yeah, it's really given the players a lot of power. And branching off of that, this whole new concept has started where dominant players just sign a 1-year deal a lot more recently. LeBron James started making this popular in 2014 when he re-signed with the Cavs. It was a 2-year contract, and the second year was a player option. So that means that if he doesn't like how things are going, he can opt out and just leave after 1 year. So it's like 1 year guaranteed with a second year optional. So he's really only ever signing 1-year deals when he's with Cleveland. Because then in the second, in 2015, he decided, yeah, I guess I'll stay. And he just opted in. So he didn't sign a new contract, but he could have opted out and become a free agent if he wanted to. And then in 2016, he was again a free agent, but he said that publicly that he'd re-sign with the Cavs. But again, for a 2-year contract, but only 1 year guaranteed. And the second season of that contract was optional for him, so if he wanted to leave, he could have. So in the 2016 to 17 season, he was guaranteed to be a Cav. 2017, he could have opted out and become a free agent if he wanted to, but he didn't. He stayed in Cleveland for one more run, and then he became a completely unrestricted free agent in 2018 again, like he was in 14 and 16, and he then left the Cavs. And interesting enough, he did sign a 4-year contract with the Lakers for the max, and it's 3 years guaranteed, so he's going to be there for a while. But again, like everyone says, like, oh man, he's going to play the rest of his career there. What if in a mere 3 seasons, when he's still like around 35, 36, he's unhappy with the Lakers? He can just leave again if he wants to. Like these max contracts are so short that it really doesn't guarantee all that much for a team. You kind of in your head build it up that it's going to be for a while, but it's really not that long of a time. So ultimately, do I think that this is good for the league? I do think it's really good for the league, honestly. It makes it a lot more interesting, you know. In the last, compared to when the Cavs won the title in 2016, that was 2 years ago. Let's see, all the stars that have changed teams: LeBron James, Paul George, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. Those are just to name a few. Those were like just right off the top of my head. I didn't even make a formal list or anything, but I could name a ton of other guys too, you know. Let's see here. Kawhi probably shortly will be changing teams. Gordon Hayward, all-star that changed the team. Paul Millsap, all-star that changed the team. Al Horford, all-star that changed the team. Jeff Teague, former all-star, changed teams twice in 2 years. You know, players move so often, and the league looks so different than it did even a mere 2 years ago. I think it's pretty crazy. So I think it's good because it entertains us and it keeps us entertained, and that's what sports are supposed to do. They're supposed to be entertaining and to keep our attention and to keep things interesting, and ultimately to be an interesting hobby and pastime and give us something to talk about. And the increased player mobility gives us a lot to talk about. And on that list of players, I forgot to mention DeMarcus Cousins too, by the way. He's another guy that changed teams within the last 2 years. Alright guys, that's all I got for today. Just a little video talking about what player mobility means for the NBA. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have something to say, whether agreeing or disagreeing with me. And I'll see you next time. Bye.